Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel, and I am going to introduce the reads that I read in September. This is a little late because the internet was entirely out in my apartment for about a week, so I didn't even film to prepare for when the internet would come back. I was like, screw it, we're just gonna wait. So it's a little late, and it's been a while since I've even looked at these books, so I don't know how well I'm going to be able to describe them. I hope I'll be able to describe them well to you. But in general, I'm not very good at giving the plot of books. I'm very bad about that. I'm better about like giving my thoughts about them and then like giving my opinions on certain aspects of the book. When it comes to like actually describing the book, not the best. So we'll see how this goes. But the first book I read in September was Leaving Cheyenne by Larry McMurtry, and this is the author of one of my favorite books, Lonesome Dove. And this is the first book I read of his that's outside of the Lonesome Dove world, that's outside of the Lonesome Dove characters. And this book is, okay, I'm gonna look at the back to sort of, refresh my memory about character names. But it's sort of about the, how to describe it, the not typical love story between Gideon Fry, Molly Taylor, and Johnny McLeod. So Johnny McLeod and Gideon Fry are pretty much best friends in Texas. This happens around the 1920s, I believe. And so Gideon and Johnny are best friends, and they both sort of have this relationship with this girl named Molly who lives nearby. And the story follows the relationship of these three characters from a young age of about 22, 23, through 1920s America, and then the 1940s America when World War II is happening, and then as you start going even later, and so you're introduced to cars, you're introduced to film, you're introduced to like all these various new aspects of American society, and within that you're following this unconventional, that's the word I was looking for earlier, unconventional love story between the three. And if you've only read YA love triangles, and I say that not as any sort of insult, but I do, when I watch a lot of booktube, I do hear a lot about love triangles, love triangles within YA. So if you want to see an adult version of how a love triangle can be handled effectively and well and convincingly, this would be a very good book. So it's, Larry McMurtry, I mentioned in a recent video when I was discussing Lonesome Dove, he has a way of just introducing you to characters where you really feel like you've known them your entire life. It's really remarkable the way he's able to do this. And so he gives you Gideon Fry, who's a very stubborn, very stern man who kind of wants to feel freedom but doesn't know how to do it, and then he comes to realize that, you know what, he is sort of a workaholic type of person, and he's always been in love with this girl Molly, but I think his personality kind of made it difficult for them to really be together. And then against him you have his best friend Johnny, who is a free spirit, who doesn't want to be tied down to a ranch, doesn't want to be tied down to a particular job. He wants to roam the open country. And you see how his personality affects his relationship with Molly. And you see how Molly kind of interacts with both of them. And this really, when I think about it now, this threesome really sort of, you can actually see it as well in Lonesome Dove when it comes to the character of Clara and Augustus and Cal, and you can kind of see the same sort of relationship, maybe not so much love, but there's a feeling of caring. And yeah, it was a lovely book. I read it very quickly. It's not as powerful as Lonesome Dove, but I wasn't expecting it to, but it was a very lovely story, and I enjoyed this one. So next, I ended up going with some nonfiction, and this is The Invitation Only Zone, the extraordinary story of North Korea's abduction project. And this was so good. This was so fascinating. So basically, this is about this program that North Korea had where they were secretly abducting Japanese citizens. And this was back in the 70s, and they were abducting these Japanese citizens and bringing them back to North Korea, and they were putting them into these areas called the Invitation Only Zone, which are sort of these closed-in areas that were separated off from the general North Korean population. And why is that? It's because the Invitation Only Zone, they had a lot more freedom, they had a lot more access to resources, so they didn't have, when it came down to like the big famine in North Korea, they were struggling, but they didn't have the humongous struggle of the North Korean actual citizens, because they were sort of put apart. But it was this fascinating story as to like trying to figure out why North Korea abducted these Japanese citizens. And so you have the why did North Korea do this? Was it there was rumors that they were trying to turn Japanese into spies for North Korea, trying to use them as sort of propaganda, as like, oh, North Korea is so wonderful, these Japanese people came here to be, North Korean. There was concepts that they were just, being abducted so they could teach Japanese to North Koreans so that the North Koreans could become spies. Then there was also theories that they were brought in to create these sort of as baby factories, basically, because they were often kidnapped in couples, and they kind of wanted them to breed children that would become North Korean. So there's like all this conspiracy and ideas behind it. And along with that, you have the utter and complete disaster of the Japanese government, who basically just ignored the fact that this even existed. That whenever they were told, something's going wrong, something's happening, they were just like, no, it's just your imagination, things like that. And it basically just goes through how the Japanese government did end up reacting to the abduction project, and how the North Korean, South Korean, Japanese relationship around this project came to be and what happened. And it was such a fascinating story. Really, really liked it. I have to say though, when it comes to the actual writing and nonfiction, the book benefited from it being such an interesting story, but I think the book suffered from the way the story was presented. I think this book should have been presented in a much more linear format. Basically, the author sort of introduces you the main abductees for the project, and then he kind of goes back in time and he discusses how the concept of race helped create this division between these three Asian countries. Then he goes back to the abductees, and then he goes back to giving the history of the war between North Korea and South Korea, and he just keeps going back and forth. And it just, even though all the information is important, I think he kind of cuts the narrative too many times, which kind of cuts the flow, cuts the sense of ease that you would get from actually reading this. So the story benefited a lot from it just being a fascinating story, but kind of suffered again from the actual writing. Plus, these characters are so fascinating that really you want to know so much about every single one, and I don't think he goes enough into detail about these people. Like, there's so much more that could have been written, and I feel like he retained a lot of the information that he gained. Like, he goes on these interviews, he has all these interviews, and he only gives you like maybe one line from the entire interview. It's like, well, there's a lot more information that you could be giving us, but you're not. And so I really feel like he could have benefited from making this a longer book, especially when I compare it to the nonfiction I just read, which will be in my October reads. But that author, he gives so much detail that, like, like the dog happens to be like the family dog happens to like have some sort of a kikkake. The word is kikkake in Japanese. starting point, like no, I can't think of the word. Kikkake, like, yeah, like a jumping off point. Like even the family dog has some sort of correlation to how the events come to happen, which is maybe too much detail, but at least he goes into it. At least that author explores it, and I think this author really could have gone into more detail. But the story is fascinating, so interesting. Oh my goodness, I read this in 2 days. I was just could not stop turning the pages. It was really, really good. I mean, yeah, crazy story. I mean, whenever it comes to North Korea, like every time I read a story about North Korea, I always come out with more questions that I have answers, and that's what makes this subject so fascinating, because it's just so weird and out there, and it's just like, how does this country even exist? So yeah, this was really good. After that, I switched over to French, Vietnamese book in French. This is the book called Roman sans titre. This has been translated into English as novel without a title. And this is about the Vietnamese War, the Vietnam War, from the point of view of North Korea. So I've read quite a bit of about the Vietnam War, but I've actually only read about the American side. And so, you know, that's very famous, and the hardship of the soldiers who went there, this you know, interminable war battle that was really hard, harsh conditions. It's like, you know, this you can't beat these people. It's just not possible. There's something within these people that there's no way we can beat them. We should not be here. And so this is the first time I read from the North Korean point of view. And this book was actually banned in Vietnam because of the sort of questioning the author goes about the Vietnam War. So basically it follows the main character, Quan, who has become captain of his section in the army, and he is given temporary leave when he hears about a childhood friend who has sort of gone crazy. Mentally, he's sort of snapped, and he kind of finds that hard to believe. He thinks, you know, there's something up. So he's given leave to go take care of his friend. And so as he goes to go take care of his friend, he kind of wanders through the countryside, and he sees what happens, and he has these interactions with villagers. And, you know, obviously there's some dead soldiers that he comes upon, and he goes back to his hometown, and he has to deal with his friend. And it's this very beautiful book that really talks about the human side of the war, the brutal side of the war, the way that these North Koreans like created this idealism where basically they just, Americans could not win. It would be impossible. So it was this really, it's beautifully written, and it really just describes this so much. There aren't really too many war scenes, because it really is about humanity. And it really is about what was motivating the North Koreans. And it really showed, not North Koreans, North Vietnamese, the North Vietnamese, and sort of this loss of, you know, what started the war, Marxism, communism, what are these ideals really something we need to follow? I mean, these come from foreign grounds. Why are we following ideals from a foreign country? So it really goes into that, and it was really, really lovely, really, really well. I mean, superbly written, very beautiful. So I quite enjoyed this, and it was it was nice to have such a new perspective. And so, and if you're into, you know, checking off lists, this checks off women, female, Asian writer, women in translation, new perspective, banned books week, what, you know, all those things. This was if you're into like that kind of thing, checking off those lists, this would be a really good book to pick up. So that's Roman sans titre, novel without a name. So that was the last novel book that I read in the month, because then I switched over to reading manga, where I read the entire series of Cardcaptor Sakura. which I did an entire vlog about that you can watch. But basically, Cardcaptor Sakura is a very traditional, very famous magic schoolgirl genre comic by Clamp, and it's basically just about a schoolgirl who non-deliberately releases all these cards, and she has to gather them all back up again, otherwise some sort of calamity will fall upon the world or her, or it's not exactly explained, just a calamity will be caused. So it kind of follows her and her relationship. She has this beautiful relationship with her brother, and she has wonderful friends, and it's super cute and super lovely. And I immediately, if you watch the vlog, I ended up buying the sequel to this, which means I didn't actually reduce my TBR pile at all this month, but that's okay. But yeah, I read this and I talked all about it in my vlog, so make sure to catch that if you're interested. And then the last thing I read, which kind of spoils my next manga vlog, I don't know, I am vlogging it, but it's kind of a weird vlog. I don't know if it's working out really well, so I might not publish it at all. But I did read the very first volume of Trigun. Trigun is this sort of space western adventure story where basically this ship of human refugees crashes on the planet, and they sort of have to, when it crashes, there are basically these plants on this ship. So plants, not like trees and bushes, but like electricity plant, water plant, things like that fell in certain regions of the planet. So the cities kind of congregated against these plants, and at the beginning of the story, one of those 7 cities has been annihilated, and this character Vash, the Stampede, has something to do with that. And so you meet him and you come to see he's such a lovely, bubbly, fun, love and peace kind of character. And so you're trying to figure out, what does he have to do with the annihilation of his city? Who is this person? Where does he come from? And what power does he have and hold? So I read the first volume of this, and I mean, I've seen the anime of this, and it's a really beloved anime of mine. So it was really exciting to start reading this. And yeah, that's the end of my September reads. So just 3 books, but I read a lot of manga, and yeah, it was a good month. Simple, quiet, just nice and breezy and easy. So sorry this video is late, but I hope you enjoyed hearing about what I read in September, and I will see you guys in my next video. Thanks. Bye.